there, thanks for joining me at Autism Advocating, where we share all things autism related and parenting strategies, tips, resources. Today we're talking about what we wish we would have known the first year after receiving our autism diagnosis. So as you know, if you've been a part of the channel, I have a 6.5-year-old boy who's diagnosed just after his 3rd birthday. He was nonverbal until he was about 4.5 years old-ish, and we decided to enter this YouTube journey to share some resources and strategies, and this episode here today is a big one. So if you're new here, be sure to stay tuned and check this out. So I'm going to talk about the big 3 today, what I consider the big 3 things we wish we would have known when we received our autism diagnosis. And this first one, I'm telling you, we needed someone to hold our hand a little bit better. So the first thing we did, your first resource is your pediatrician. They are going to get you started. They're the person that you've been working with since your child was born and probably know your child's health history the closest, and they're going to be the best for pointing you to different resources, different places in your state. I am here in Minnesota, so if you're in Minnesota, our second stop, which is a resource I recommend for you, is a developmental pediatrician. We went to Children's Minneapolis, so Children's of Minnesota, and we worked with a developmental pediatrician's office there. We were assisted by a nurse practitioner who took us through all of the testing. We were sent out a packet of assessment upon questionnaire, all the things, which if you're an autism parent and you're new, you will learn that these things are routine, especially when you're getting started with any of the different resources and therapies that you're using for your child. I highly, highly recommend, here's a big tip for you. Keep a notebook or some type of something handy that has all the dates when your son crawled, when he talked, when he walked, when he, started eating solids, all of that information, his entire health history, his or her, I should say, all their health history, all the doctors that they've gone to, and keep a notebook where you can add to it as you see a doctor, when you saw them, if they did testing, all of that. And I'll share with you in a couple episodes a resource I have available on Etsy coming soon that is a digital format of this exact planner that is going to be available on your smartphone, that you can access all this information. But I highly recommend keeping it in one location, so as you're filling out forms, you can reference it, and that way you just have it very handy. But the developmental pediatrician took us through, their office took us through the initial diagnosis. And so here in Minnesota, we had to have a medical diagnosis, and that's where we received that. And that was, we were referred by our pediatrician to the developmental pediatrician. But do your research and check out developmental pediatricians. They are not all created equal. There are good and bad, just like everything out there. The next place that we were referred to was, we were told we would be contacted by a social worker, and we didn't know, it was very vague, a social worker. Like where the social worker was supposed to come from, we didn't really understand. And this is where we fell down. If you're in Minnesota, again, you want to contact front door services through the county or state. You're gonna be able to get in touch, depending on where you're located, with a social worker, and they are there to help you find resources such as grants and waivers. And in Minnesota, you have access to TEFRA. I don't know if that's countrywide, but it is it's a version of medical assistance that you pay a fee to have the state's insurance as your secondary insurance or your primary, depending. This is going to be state specific. If you're in Minnesota, you contact Front Door Services. They'll get you started. They'll help you go through the paperwork, tell you where to apply and what steps to do. But TEFRA is the paid version of medical assistance here in Minnesota that helps you as your secondary and or primary insurance. That is a fee-based program. The social workers that you're going to work with are going to help you apply for grants, apply for waivers. These things can be used for additional services such as riding therapy, swimming lessons, adaptive gymnastics, all kinds of different things. We were blessed to be able to get a grant that purchased us some sensory equipment that has come in hugely beneficial for us during COVID and the stay-at-home order. We had a place that our son could use. So definitely a big resource, and one we didn't know about, and we expected someone to get in touch with us, and when they didn't, we didn't know where to go. We went back to the developmental pediatrician's office, hit dead ends, ended up calling front door services, and were able to get services and the grant after a year and a half. So don't be like us and check into services. The other big thing is your schools. Obviously, the public school system has great resources. You have your IEPs and stuff that you'll be learning about, and we'll talk more about those, so don't get overwhelmed here. But the school district, they should have on their website for your school district a phone number for general information. Contact them, see what resources they have available as well. They also have different schools for specialty schools for kids with autism. There are autism day treatment programs depending on the age of your child. I recently learned too, like California has at the age of 3 is when they can get officially diagnosed, and then they get put into their system and their programming. So some states it's automatic. Here in Minnesota, you have to contact the public school system. They do their assessments and they will help guide you. We opted to use St. David's Center. There's Fraser Center here in Minnesota as well, and they were fabulous. We went in, they did their assessments. You're catching on here, lots of assessments. But they were able to offer an autism day treatment program for our son, and it was more play-based, which was fitting for our child. So that's the other tip here, is to think about who your child is, which type of services they'll benefit from most. For us, we didn't think ABA was a good starting point. So that's why we went with an autism day treatment program, and it was covered by insurance here in Minnesota. So definitely look into all the things, guys, definitely. There are also, I wanna mention, organizations like TACA is a huge one. And if you're watching this in the month of October, they hold their annual conference for TACA. It's typically held out in California. Because of COVID, it is virtual this year. You pay one fee, you get access to everything for the entire month of October. Definitely check into it. That is TACA, TACA. And I believe they are TACA.com, but don't quote me on it. They are a really good resource. Also check into, like, Minnesota has an Autism Society Minnesota. They put out really cool brochures, and I don't know if brochures, magazines, because it's a little bit more in depth, that shares with you all the different programs that are going on throughout the year for children with sensory needs or autism, that sort of thing. Wonderful magazines to get your hands on, to see where they have special events going on, or the different museums. Sometimes they'll open up an hour early, stay late, open an hour late for children with sensory needs. So definitely check into that. I've touched on in a previous episode, Autism Speaks is another resource. That is not state specific, but definitely look for different organizations that are really good at providing resources. And lastly, in this this first section that I'm talking about here is a biomedical professional. So some of you may have heard of biomedical doctors, and some of you may have not. TACA will give you an introduction to biomedicine. They have state chapters, local chapters in your areas. They offer mentorships they have a membership to their program, and then they offer mentorships if you're looking for a mentor. They also have just a lot of general information. If you go to one of their events and it's your first time at the event, you'll get a nice big booklet that talks all things autism. It's been a wonderful, wonderful resource for us. And then to find a biomedical professional, what they do is they look at alternative approaches to treating your child. So they are treating your whole child. What we have gone in and done it with our biomedical professional is some different testing that has been able to tell us additional diagnoses that our son has received. MTHFR is one of them. And then they look specifically at our son and say, okay, here's what he's lacking, here's where you're struggling, here's what we need to do, supplements, vitamins, minerals, that sort of thing. They help you get started with all the different things. They also look at alternative treatments like hyperbaric chamber treatments, ionic foot baths, some really cool things that I'll get into in another future episode. But I want to move on, because if you've stayed with me through this, let's go to the next thing. The next big thing we wish we would have known in that first year is to build your village. That village may not be friends and family. It may be some friends, some family. You know, we were always told that you'll find out who your friends are when you receive an autism diagnosis. You'll also find out who your family is and who's going to be able to handle it, who's going to be able to be there for you, who's going to be your rock, the people that you can turn to when you need a break and say, can you please take him for an hour? I just need to take a nap, take a shower, do something for myself. So the other big resource in this Build a Village is finding other families that are going through what you're going through. We were able to really build our village through St. David's Center and the families that we met for that at drop-off. You know, simply dropping off and picking up our child. Their children were going into the same class, and you immediately have a bond. You have that connection. That is a great starting place. And I have kept in contact with a lot of the people that we've met through St. David's Center. And let me tell you, they are invaluable resources for you. And lastly, support groups. These can be in person or on Facebook. I will caution you about Facebook. They can get a little overwhelming at times, depending on your personality. But in-person support groups, or nowadays with COVID, it may be virtual through Zoom, but definitely look for a support group and reach out if you're needing. If you're not sure where to turn to, please comment below. I'd love to help you out. I'd love to talk to you. And number 3 in our big 3 of what we wish we would have known is how valuable your partner is. And if you're doing this as a single parent, bless you, and reach out below. I would love to help you get in touch with resources, but find a partner if it isn't your spouse, okay? Someone that you can talk to about all the things. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, someone from your church. The big thing about this that I will say is communication. You have to have open and honest communication with your partner, and we wish we would have known better how to communicate in the beginning, but we just started being blunt. That's my best advice with your partner, is be blunt, be honest with them. Tell them if you need a break. Tell them if you don't understand. Tell them if you don't agree with the decisions that you're making, or you're not sure about the decisions you're making, or if you want to do more for your child, less for your child, all the things. There's no right and wrong in parenting in general, let alone parenting a child with autism, because if you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. So I want to thank you so much for sticking with us, and I hope these big 3 have helped you out today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'm always happy to chat with you and help you with any additional resources or point you in the direction to a resource. So thank you again for joining me today, and check back soon for the next video. Thanks.